Welcome to NTR Radio. I'm Tom Porcinubis.
And I'm VZ Mark II.
So, right off the bat, here's what you do to get involved with the show live. You hit up ntrradio.net, you click on the chat link, you put in your nickname in the box and hit the button, and you want to sing the IRC channel. Alternatively, you can take your favorite IRC client, you point it at irc.ryzen.net, and join us in the Pounder Hash SLC Media channel. In addition, you can get at us on Twitter at CAnubis, at VZMK2, at NTR_radio. And as always, the email address to get involved with the show is ntrradio@gmail.com. So, what's been going on?
Not much actually. Like as far as I'm not really watching. I'm only watching one thing. And that's again Sengoku Collection, and I have 2 more episodes left. So after that, I don't know what I'll feel like watching. Probably one of my Blu-rays or something. But I did get some mail this week.
Oh yeah?
Yes, I finally got after a whole month, I got my Nendoroid Hinata from Wata. And I got a Master Grade Gundam NT1 yesterday.
Nice. Gundam Alex for those who don't know the model number.
Yeah, I always call it the NT1. I know the Alex is the other name. I don't know. I'm just used to calling it the NT1 more.
Right.
Since it means the new type. But the Alex is just meant to be like a weird romanization of RX that they also call the Alex. That's why.
And then
it's a pun.
If I'm not mistaken, they also came up with backwards came up with what it's supposed to stand for. It's Armored Layer External. It gets equipped with the whole applique armor set that goes on it. I always like the Alex's design. Like, it's one of my favorite Gundam designs, and I'm a guy that doesn't generally like Gundam designs.
Most of the stuff I collect is either Gundam designs or gyms. Unless we're talking like the Zeta era stuff, then I sort of then it's like anything.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I collect like the Xeon or like the bad guy grunt mechs and unique mechs that aren't Gundams. Like I've got the Sinanju, I've got the Jesta. There's a few Gundams. Like I have a HGUC of the EXS from Sentinel.
I also like Crossbones stuff.
Crossbones. I like Crossbones designs. I do like the Gundam designs. I'm sort of halfway on, mostly because what I really like is the crossbone thruster at the back and the whole way the whole core block system for those ones work.
Right. Also, more Victory Gundam stuff needs to be made. Late UC stuff. This is stuff
I'm telling you, if they come up with an HGUC of the Denons on, I'm getting 5.
Yeah, they should make it like either just it could be a cheap, but otherwise they could put like 2 in a box.
Oh yeah, do like they did with the ball and the Loto.
Yeah, the thing from Unicorn.
Yeah, I think I still have one Loto left to build. Like I built one, and the other one's still on the runner. But yeah, I actually do have something. So, like, stuff's starting to open back up where I am.
Yeah.
So I actually got a chance to go out shopping kind of in a way that I used to do pretty often. So the retro game stores open back up, and naturally everyone's got like the masks and shit. But I did manage to pick up something I've been actually wanting to get for a while. So there's a company called Retrobit that they make like controllers for both original hardware and USB for PCs and PlayStations, Xboxes, and stuff like that. They have the official license to manufacture original hardware and USB versions of the Sega Genesis and Sega Saturn controllers, and I think they're working on a Sega Dreamcast as well. And I managed to find and get one of their USB 6-button Genesis pads.
Oh, that is one of my favorite pads from the day.
For that era, it's probably the second best controller that, like, and I'll fight people on this. It's probably the second best controller from that era. Like the pre-dual analog era, it's like just below S tier is the 6-button Genesis, and then S tier is the Saturn. But yeah, because I have a whole lot of like 2D and like side-scrolling kind of older style games, and don't get me wrong, I have one of these Xbox One controllers, and it's the best controller. Like, it's the best controller that exists, and fight me on that. But for a lot of the 2D games, stuff like that, stuff that controls like it came before the advent of analog sticks.
Yeah.
It leaves a whole lot to be desired. One, because the D-pad is kind of shitty for the on the Xbox One pad. Two, because the analog sticks don't really cut it they don't make up for how bad the D-pad is. And three, because it only has 4 face buttons.
Yeah.
So I got one of the 6-button Genesis controllers.
I know a lot of people.
It's so
I'm
good.
sorry. Yes, I know a lot of people had the nostalgia for the Nintendo controls, but I always found like the Sega controls better because of the way the D-pad was 360.
Exactly. That's like half or like 75% of the reason that I.
But for some reason, Sega during the Dreamcast decided we're gonna go the Nintendo way and do one of those hard edge D-pads.
Yeah, so I think what went into that decision, and that's a decision I don't agree with, but what really went into that was a lot of games are going the analog control route, and you see that also with like the mainline Sonic the Hedgehog games on the Dreamcast were all analog. Like the D-pad was used to look around, maybe. Or like it was used as another set of buttons in stuff like, say, Rainbow Six, where, okay, all the options, all the actions are mapped to the D-pad, which I can understand because you're not pointing that thing in the upper right when you do that. But at the same time, you lose that sense of control when you lose the like disc-shaped D-pad.
Yeah.
One thing I did like the later Xbox 360 controllers did this, where the D-pad's both. You can put your fingers like in between the main directions and turn the thing 90 degrees, and that'll either raise or lower the landings in between each of the directions. But yeah, I've been experimenting with this new controller, and it's just so much better for anything that looks like it came before, like the late PlayStation era. Yeah, other than that, not much been going on. It's like I've been meaning to watch some anime, but I haven't gotten around to it. I do plan on watching F91 soon.
Yes.
Yeah, because other than shit that's
Then
come
you'll
out very recently. I have closed the loop on early UC, so I need to start into what exists for late UC currently.
Yeah, I also recommend as a series V Gundam, Victory Gundam.
Oh yeah, after I get done with F91, that's next. So, I one thing I also want to do is I want to give Age a fair shake. Like I so here's what I find hilarious. So like Age and Iron-Blooded Orphans are basically complete opposites of each other as far as I'm concerned. Age, excellent design work. So good. But and like evidently I haven't seen it. The story is garbage. IBO, and again, I haven't seen it, but I'm just going off of popular perception. Story is on point, 100%. Design work, awful.
I know you hate the lack of armor on the torso.
It's like if we're doing this thing where we're doing a combined arms thing where okay, we've got like mobile worker tanks and they're also in the mix fighting against these mobile suits. Can we please at least get some armor on where it makes sense to have armor? But
it doesn't really
yeah, that would be like the 70th time I've gone on that tangent. But I do want to give Age a genuine try. Just based off of the designs, by the way. Listen, for me, good design work can go a very long way with a mecha series. And then to contrast that, bad design work can ruin a mecha series for me just as quickly.
And now it has good design work that nobody talks about is Reconquista.
I mean, hey, everyone except me thought it was super confusing. I don't know how that happened. Because I feel like this is one of those things similar to Evangelion, where everyone thinks it's super confusing, but they really aren't paying attention.
And me, I'm just like, it's Tomino, it's supposed to be weird.
Well, it's like I had to battle my anime club to show Evangelion in the club. Because everyone had this perception that it's just this super confusing mindfuck of a series. And like number one, no. And number two, we're not gonna watch past like episode 6. Like, it's pretty straightforward from like 1 to 6. It's pretty straightforward for half of the series.
1 to 6 is the most straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most like a robot anime we're used to. It really doesn't get into non-robot anime shit until more than halfway through the series.
I would say more like the last third.
I want to look at the episode list just so I understand where this divide is. Okay, so yeah, episode 13 we're still in robot anime shit. Like episode 13 obviously isn't a robot anime episode, but it's still robot anime shit up until like episode 16 is where it starts, and 17 is where it starts to get in people's head. It's like 17 and like spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen this anime from 1995. 17 is where it's going into the like, so 16 is where Shinji falls into the angel, where it's the big sphere but that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
really the angel, that's his shadow. And then 17 is okay, we're gonna talk about that. And then yeah, 8, and then yeah, it starts to get real past that point. But previously, okay, we're talking about yeah, it's the conspiracy. Before that, it's the episode 14 is the clip show. 13's where the angel tries to hack into the system. This is so you imagine my struggle with my own anime club, that I couldn't show this anime, that we're not gonna get as far into it as they think, because none of them ever, because riddle me this, none of them have ever seen it, but they just believe this perception that, oh, this is a weird mind fuck of an anime, because they heard about it on the internet. Meanwhile, I heard about Evangelion from the hentai dating sim on Newgrounds. That's not really where I heard about Evangelion. I saw the first couple episodes when they aired it on Toonami that one time.
Yes, me too. That was the first time I saw it.
It was that and Nadesco. That's where I also got my introduction into Nadesco. But I could go into the shit I battled my anime club about.
I also saw the last 2 episodes of Robotech, which were the last 2 episodes of Mosquito, which are the best episodes of Mosquito. Those the last 2 episodes.
Why? Because it ended. I'm joking. I've never seen Mosquito. I plan on I might give it a try.
It's a good, decent show. No, give it a try.
Yeah.
But the last 2 episodes should have been like 4 to 5 episodes. Is what. You'll know when you see it. It's because there's like this other group of. It's hard. I don't know if I don't remember if it was another faction or just like another thing, but it felt like.
So like they introduced too many plot points at once for the show to be ending.
Well, they had like the I forgot what they were called, the Shadow Legios. The fourth one, because the one is blue, the one is red, and the other is green, and then they introduced this fourth one, and then these and it's like again, it was only the last 2 episodes you see this stuff, and you'll know it when you see it.
Yeah, that's going to be for a while, though. I still need to finish actual Macross.
Oh, yeah. You never finished a TV series?
No.
Oh.
No, I was not a mecha dude until like I was not a mecha anime dude until like the past 10 years, 12 years maybe. Like back during the Toonami era, Gundam Wing was far from my favorite show on that block. Like, I kind of watched it, I kind of knew what was going on, and like I liked giant robots, sure, but back then Gundam Wing to me was like Gundam Wing to you now. Like, it's okay. When are we gonna stop talking and get to the giant robots fighting, please? And then Robotech was kind of like the same thing. It was like as time progressed, I grew an appreciation for anime with a lot of talking in it, which is why I like Gundam now. Which is why previously I did not like Dot Hack Sign, and now I do. So, okay, this isn't an anime about an MMORPG. This is an anime about people talking. I can get into that. I like listening to people talk, apparently. But yeah, the original Macross is one of those things that I've been enjoying watching.
Mm. You know what you gotta see?
What?
Dan Cougar.
See, that's one I keep hearing about, but I really know nothing about. Yeah, like I've heard about the show and I've seen the design, but other than that, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a super art show with real robot aestheticing. If that makes any sense.
I think I could get behind that. Oh, fuck, another one I need to. I basically completely forgot that I started on this one, but another one I need to actually get more into is Votoms.
Oh,
because that is so right up my alley.
I've only seen the first episode of Votoms, ever.
I think I've seen the first episode of Votoms, and that was decades ago. Like that was like 15, maybe more years ago. I don't know.
Yeah. No, listen. Even though I've seen a lot of mecha shows, there's still some I need to see. I fucking need to see. It's actually not really a mecha show, but even though it has in it, but Zillion is a show I need to see someday, because that's basically like by the Sega Master System, the anime, the Sega Mark III, the anime. Oh, no, I'm not kidding. That they even their guns they have are based on the light gun. The Mark III had.
Shit, then I might need to watch it then.
Yeah. What's another one? I need to see Bismarck from 1984. That one got all subbed. That has like one of the catchiest openings ever. I swear. What else do I need to see? I should check out First Gundam as a series. I've seen the movies. Now I should watch it as a series.
In my opinion, it holds up. If you watch it understanding the paradigm at the time, it holds up.
Oh yeah.
Like for people getting into it, I recommend the compilation movies. But if someone already knows what Gundam is all about, I think the first Gundam series warrants a watch.
One I couldn't get into and dropped early on was Southern Cross.
See, that one, I don't think I got that far in Robotech. Like the only parts of Robotech I even remember from back in the day are the Macross stuff.
That's
which
all
is why like when I see I forgot the name of this video game though, but they have a Robotech game for like the PlayStation 2, and it's based on the Mospeada part, I think.
Yeah, well, that's all they have the license for.
Well, that's all currently, because they previously had Robotech Battle Cry, and that was like multi-platform. That was a big game, a relatively big game at the time, and that was all Macross. Like it was butchered Macross with Maximilian, with like Max Sterling and all the weird ass names, but
yeah.
it was Veritech fighters. You were going around. It was a semi-competent flight action game, but I look at this other Robotech game and it's like, okay, obviously something happened with Robotech, and it was later I would find out that okay, the whole thing with Carl Masek and having to bring over these other two unrelated shows and all that to to bring over Macross.
Yeah, my favorite clusterfuck out of the whole Robotech thing is the whole the Jetfire and the Valkyrie toy.
Oh yeah,
that will always be my favorite clusterfuck, because it's like, you bring over this thing, but then you can't bring the flagship toy over, but this other thing got it.
What a fucking crazy state of affairs the entire Robotech Macross thing is.
And there was also the thing where there was the model kit line of Robotech that came before the anime, but they bought that name. Something like that. The Revel line of not related to Revel Tech.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
Revel model kits. They make kits of like
and
airplanes and shit.
yeah, and those had some designs from Dogram, and it was a comic book by DC. I think it was DC. That had the Dogram. It was a Robotech comic, but it had the Dogram designs on the cover. They were flying like super robots.
Fucking Robotech just has its tentacles into everything, and I'm not happy about it. Like they're messing up with like Revel model kit lines. They're messing up with Transformers. They're messing up with BattleTech. Just keep it one place, please. If you're gonna have Robotech, just fucking keep your hands to yourself. Don't like, oh, I'm gonna fuck around with the BattleTech community because these things have nothing to do with each other. It's just such a weird state of affairs with the whole Robotech thing.
No, yeah.
Like we did that episode a while back, and it's like we barely even scratched the surface.
Oh no, the rabbit hole is like it goes to like the center of the earth.
You need one of those conspiracy theory cork boards to weave together all the connections, and and now Harmony Gold is like a real estate company. So it's like, so somehow like the apartment you're staying in, if you're in this particular part of the United States, might be somehow connected to Robotech now. And now they're trying to do a Robotech cinematic universe with Sony. It's just weird.
Oh God,
it's crazy. And you know they're not going to have any Macross in that shit. It's not going to happen.
Oh yeah. Oh, I kept saying that if they ever get some sort of Robotech movie off the ground, it's not going to have anything remotely to look like Macross at all.
Who's gonna like it?
No one.
It's like, so like you got 90% of the Robotech fan base who are basically Macross fans.
No, I got it. Here's what happened. They're probably gonna go on the notion that it's okay for Transformers to redesign, their stuff, or even though the best received stuff is the stuff that looks the most like Generation 1, which is why Bumblebee did so well.
Yeah, I still don't think anyone's gonna like that, especially not with the Robotech. Like 90% of Robotech fans are basically just Macross fans.
Yeah,
and then 8% of those are basically just Spada fans. Yeah. And then the remaining 2%, like all 5 of those people, like Southern Cross, and that's it.
Southern Cross, it's weird. It's like Japan. It's like so many robot things have like gotten these weird toy and model kit revivals and things. No matter how obscure, there's always like a fan base for it. Nothing for Southern Cross. I don't know if that's because of the Harmony Gold thing or just the total lack of interest at all.
Well, as far as I understand, Harmony Gold can't touch what's going on in Japan at all. Which is why it was such an issue when Tatsunoko gave whoever had the fucking the Mech Warrior BattleTech license that second their blessing to use the Marauder 2 and all those designs that they lifted from original Macross. Because Harmony Gold was like, whoa, we determined that license in the US, boys and girls. Not you, Tatsunoko, who, made the shit.
Yeah, it's all bonkers, and
it's fucking. It's a really weird section of anime history to talk about. Because, like you said, you end up going down a rabbit hole that never ends.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, we're going to hit up the break right here. Keep it right here on NTR Radio. Welcome back to NTR Radio. So, this episode, we're going to cover an article. This is coming from the Japan Times. It's a feature on the Heisei era, because we recently transitioned over to the Reiwa era, I believe the term is.
Yes, Reiwa.
So they were doing a feature on different aspects of how Japan developed during the Heisei era. And this is the 7th article in that feature. The title is Obsession, and they're talking about the development of otaku culture during the Heisei era. So, it starts like this. Katsumi Goto is a self-proclaimed old-school otaku. Born in the city of Nagoya in 1970, he spent his teenage years devouring popular anime series of the time, including Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, sequel to the well-known Gundam franchise that first aired in 1985, and Dirty Pair, a sci-fi adventure featuring a sexy female duo working as trouble consultants. This was the heyday of the VHS cassette, and Goto would spend his allowance renting anime tapes, many of which were made specifically for release on home video format to meet the period's surging demand for anime content. So these are the OVAs.
Yes.
It wasn't a hobby that he could openly share with his classmates, however. This was years before the otaku image underwent a makeover of sorts. Thanks to the popularization. You got to keep it on the down low. Thanks to the popularization of the fan culture and the global acceptance as a source of soft power. Otaku of our generation were typically way down in the school caste system, and girls tended to look at us with disdain, he says, referring to the invisible hierarchy in the classroom determined by different social status symbols. But a lot of that seems to have changed. Dark roots. It would be an understatement to say that the concept of otaku, a highly loaded and ambiguous term derived from the honorific for you in Japanese, had a rough debut in the nation's mainstream narrative. First introduced by essayist Akio Nakamori in 1983 to describe socially inept manga and anime-obsessed nerdy types who were known to address each other in absurdly polite terms. The word gained widespread notoriety in 1989 when a 26-year-old man named Tsutomu Miyazaki was arrested and later sentenced to death for killing and mutilating 4 girls aged 4 to 7 and sexually molesting their corpses. Police searches found thousands of videotapes cluttering the serial killer's room, including anime and slasher films, leading mass media to dub Miyazaki the otaku murderer, moniker that would tarnish the image of the social demographic for decades to come. And this is where I come from when I say that the perception in the West that otaku is a negative term is something that's 100% manufactured by the Japanese news media.
Yeah, yes.
It was used as a derisive term by Nakamori back when he kind of introduced the concept, but where we get this with this idea that it's a heinous insult to call someone an otaku, and you shouldn't call yourself an otaku if you're a Western anime fan.
Which is why I'm almost, if maybe there's something in those Noteki memoir book that you have, but I feel like that's why Otaku no Video was made as a counter response to that.
That wouldn't surprise me. I don't know that they mentioned that in the Noteki memoirs. That's something I have to reread, but I would be 0% surprised if the Noteki memoirs were, or if Otaku no Video was created as kind of a counterpoint to the media firestorm going around surrounding otaku back in the
because that came out in 91, right?
Yes,
that came out so it would be still fresh.
Exactly. So going on, prior to Miyazaki, the public image of perpetrators of bizarre crimes were often of delinquents and those from complex upbringings, says Kaichiro Morikawa, associate professor at School of Global Japanese Studies at Meiji University and an expert on manga, anime, games, and related popular culture. But the talk shows began using the word otaku to describe the outwardly innocuous suspect who appeared to fit the stereotype the phrase conjures, imprinting the idea that these people are would-be criminals. Reclaiming the subculture's damaged reputation would soon begin in earnest, but the image of predominantly male, reclusive social outcasts living in their fantasy worlds embodied by Miyazaki haunts to this day. In retrospect, the Heisei era began with the worst possible introduction to the term otaku and has been undergoing the process of neutralizing its negative connotations, Morikawa says. Goto continued to pursue his passion into high school, vigorously studying past anime releases he missed, such as Armor Trooper Votoms, a military sci-fi mecha anime series that ran in 1983, which left a profound impact on video games. While he lived too far away to attend the biannual comic market fan convention held in Tokyo, Goto had other means to stay up to date with trends. The late 70s and mid-80s saw a slew of influential magazines published, including Out, Animage, and Animech, and New Type, supplying dedicated fans of anime and its peripheral subculture. I've heard of a couple of those. I've heard of Animage and I've heard of New Type, but not the other two.
I've heard of Out. I've never heard of Animech before.
Supplying dedicated fans of anime and its peripheral subculture a source of information on the rapidly growing scene and sense of connection with fellow enthusiasts. Goto, a 48-year-old graphic designer with a ponytail, recalls scribbling manga characters he invented in notebooks during class and playing the American fantasy tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, whose translated version landed in Japan in 1985. Dragon Quest, the Dragon Quest franchise released its first installment in 1986 for the Famicom, transfixing Goto and his friends with its world of monsters and wizardry. The Showa era wore off, and Japan's economic bubble burst, but the historical events at the turn of the 1990s had little to do with Goto, who around that time was studying to get into an art college at Nagoya. It's customary for otaku to buy 3 copies of the same thing. One for collection, one to give to an acquaintance, and one for your own entertainment.
Just like in Lucky Store.
It's the Konatai Izumi method of consumerism. One to use, one to lend, and one to seal away forever. We're good consumers, and we don't let our spending habits be affected by the bubbles popping or the subsequent economic stagnation, he says, outlining perhaps one reason why anime and other related contents gradually shifted its target from young children to a broader age group. There was another sweeping change rewriting consumer demographics: fewer children. The nation's total fertility rate hovered around 2.0 around the time Goto was born, but by 1989 it had sunk to 1.57 and would continue to fall to a record low of 1.26 in 2005. With the number of children shrinking, popular entertainment naturally began targeting the otaku population that didn't hesitate to open their wallets for material many considered juvenile. Which is where we get why the otaku media, the whole anime, OVAs, all that related media continued to grow, even while almost every other industry was in decline during that recession.
Yeah, the hard industry. But yeah, the stuff for otaku, which includes, not just anime and manga, but video games,
model kits, toys. The early 90s.
Why I think I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But I think that's why even now with like the pandemic and all that, that's not going to phase otaku in a way. I mean, the things like Comic Kit, yes, that kind of had to be paused and all that.
Well,
But
here's the thing, and this is something that I've been looking into and working on over the past month or so. And I talked about this with Shinden 9 in the last episode of Asobi FM. Is otaku solve their own problems. When it comes to subcultural issues, otaku are experts at solving their own problems. Like, okay, we got a whole bunch of people who are making doujinshi and other doujin works, and we want to be able to like spread that, and we want these people to be able to sell their wares in a way that's manageable. So a whole bunch of people started Comiket, which still, like, Comiket's like, if you look at the differences between Comiket and anime conventions run over here, it's like two different worlds. And it's like, when it comes to fan conventions over here, there's a whole lot of bureaucracy, there's a whole lot of stuff they need to go through, there's a whole lot of they have to like found an organization to be able to put this on, this whole thing. Comiket runs without an established organization. There's an organization like overseeing the greater business aspect of it, but it's 100% volunteer run. And it's been that way this entire time. And it's big enough to disrupt the nearby train lines. Like, I was looking into some statistics on Comic-Con, and it's crazy how that event runs like such a well-oiled machine without a kind of without an overarching infrastructure above it. But yeah, the thing about otaku is we solve our own problems. When something, which is one reason why I think that the COVID thing isn't really, it's gonna be like, it definitely has an effect, but it's not going to be that big a deal in the long term, because those problems are going to get solved.
By the way, there are people selling what they would have sold at Comiket like digitally.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and part of what I'm saying is that we're going to have after this whole thing is said and done, we're going to have a more robust infrastructure for people to do that just on their own. Like, without there needing to be a whole crisis, we're going to have these artists selling their stuff digitally and at Comiket. So it's going to be a win-win for everyone. Just like after this whole thing is said and done, online conventions aren't going to go away. Like, we just discovered that this is a valuable thing to have when there aren't any conventions going on, but we're also discovering that this is valuable for people who aren't able to go to conventions or can't afford to go to conventions. So what COVID did was expose vulnerabilities, and what people are doing now is fixing those vulnerabilities. So it's not like COVID didn't cause problems. All these problems existed, but weren't apparent until something bad happened. But now that we know that these problems exist, though, like, those holes in the boat are going to get patched, and it's not going to be a problem again. Like, if something like this happens again, we're going to have online conventions. We're going to have this infrastructure for selling doujinshi online. We're going to have all this stuff in place already, so it doesn't affect people nearly as much next time.
I actually read that some paper company went out of business because cancellation of Comiket.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. Given what I know about Comiket's size, it wouldn't surprise me if there were a lot of printing companies. Well, maybe not a lot, but a non-trivial number of printing companies that basically survive off of printing stuff for Comiket. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But like, this is another thing that we're seeing is a lot of these, like, one prediction I'm going to make is, and I don't really have numbers, but just understanding the business model, one prediction that, or one thing I think is going to happen is a lot of these, a lot of the booths that you see at like regular ass conventions, like a lot of the dime a dozen anime figure selling booths are going to be in dire straits because their entire business model is predicated on, we're going to go to this convention this week, and then the next week we're going to go to that convention, and then the week after that we're going to go to that convention, and all of their sales are going to are predicated off of being at events.
Yeah.
And so a couple weeks ago I just put this free business idea out on Twitter just because it's something that's got to be necessary. It's like, someone's got to go to these booths, these small businesses that would be going to these events week after week after week, and get them set up on e-commerce, because none of these businesses are designed to stick around with an extended period of downtime. Continuing with the article, we're at the heading Convenient Narratives. The early 90s saw the Bishoujo magical girl concept really take off, epitomized by Sailor Moon, a manga and anime series that began airing in 1992, along with Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball. The title morphed into one of the nation's biggest pop culture exports. Goto followed the Sailor Moon broadcast that lasted until 97, finding a favorite in Rei Hino, a girl with a fiery but traditional traits, better known as Sailor Mars. However, he says, nothing eclipsed the impact of Neon Genesis Evangelion, anime studio Gainax and director Hideki Anno's 1995 series credited for single-handedly changing how anime was made and consumed by the public in the new age of multimedia. The 26-part series originally ran from 1995 to 96. Goto recalls he was in his final year of college when the first episode played in October. I knew something amazing was happening, he says, regretting having missed the final episode that ran the following March. The story's premise is simple, revolving around giant biomachines called Evangelion and their 14-year-old pilots, but Gainax and Anno introduce highly developed narratives with an abundance of religious, psychological, and philosophical themes, while incorporating an emotional and spiritual depth to its characters. From being a cult phenomenon with a small fan base, Evangelion gradually became a mainstream success in Japan as word of mouth and reruns of the original attracted new viewers. In his book, Otaku, Japan's Database Animals, cultural critic Hiroki Azuma says the Evangelion boom was unique in how the production company Gainax produced spin-offs and related merchandise with concepts far removed from the original, including mahjong games, erotic telephone cards featuring its characters, and even simulation games where players nurture the heroine Rei Ayanami. This thing that Gainax was offering was an aggregate of information without a narrative, into which all viewers could empathize of their own accord and could each read up convenient narratives, he says. The success of Evangelion and the big money it was raking in convinced shop owners of otaku-related merchandise scattered across Tokyo and elsewhere to relocate in Akihabara, which was fast becoming a center of the evolving culture. So yeah, I have a lot of criticisms for Azuma and the Database Animals book, but he's basically just stating facts here.
Yeah.
Evangelion changed the game not just for anime, but for the concept of anime merchandise.
Oh yeah. Also, the thing that he was describing would eventually pretty much become moe.
Yeah.
When he was talking about like
more
people
or less
being invested in the character, that's like, this is pretty much what moe is.
Well, it's like it existed before, but Evangelion really it brought it into a market paradigm. Where like previously, like we had like all the stuff people people call proto-moe, like all the cute girls from Gundam, all the stuff, Lin Min Mei, Misa Heisei from Macross, all that. There was definitely an idea of, okay, we're connecting with these fictional characters, and there was definitely the fan art in magazines, and there was definitely all that. But Evangelion took that and like made a commercial success out of it. And Akihabara's new status. The busy commercial districts in central Tokyo was primarily an electronics hub until the late 80s, drawing weekend family shoppers looking for new refrigerators and washing machines. However, as suburban electronic appliances stores began to sprout in the 1990s, Akihabara's raison d'etre was put into question, prompting it to shift its focus on specializing in still emerging personal computers. That in turn began attracting young male computer geeks with strong affinities toward typical otaku hobbies, including anime, figures, and garage kits. 94 saw the release of the Sony PlayStation, while Microsoft's epic-making operating system Windows 95 went on sale the following year, ushering a new generation of computer users and a wave of new games, including numerous anime-influenced dating simulation games and erotic adult titles. Goto, who by then was working for a Tokyo-based advertisement firm, recalls this was around the time Akihabara's makeover as an otaku mecca became visibly noticeable, with an explosion of stores catering to their desires. Ads for anime videos and games were popping up everywhere, and while outlets still offered home appliances, Akihabara had begun to assume an identity as an otaku safe haven. By the turn of the millennium, maid cafes began sprouting, where girls in cosplay outfits served tea and light meals to tired shoppers. Media played up these joints, introducing them as a favorite otaku haunt and prompting curious tourists to flock the area. The social stigma attached to otaku appeared to slowly dissipate as the motifs of the subculture began to permeate Japanese society and beyond. And so here we're coming to the turning point. Perhaps most influential in changing attitudes was 2004's Densha Otoko, a sentimental love story of an awkward nerd who, supported by an online community, breaks out of his shell to win the heart of a fashionable working woman. Supposedly based on a true story on a thread from 2channel, then Japan's largest internet bulletin board, the phenomenal success of the book, film, and television series and manga based on the story cast otaku in a kinder, more humane light, although it also implied that the only way for them to be involved in a romantic relationship was by abandoning their childish hobbies and dressing better. Densha Otoko coincided with the Akiba boom of the mid-2000s, when the district became widely featured in media as a center for a thriving subculture. Akihabara's newfound status also provided fertile ground for the return of another otaku subgenre, idol culture. Now, I just want to take the time and marvel at the fact that apart from the part with Evangelion and Sailor Moon and all that, I talked about this exact trajectory going from the Miyazaki killings to the turnaround with Densha Otoko back in Nyan the magazine, in that multi-part series I did then, which you can now read on Iyashike. Idol worship. Tama Himeno, a 25-year-old underground idol and writer, says the nation's obsession with idols can trace its modern roots to the economically booming 1980s, when star singers such as Seiko Matsuda, Akina Nakamori, and Kyoko Koizumi drew devoted male fans. The decade saw the debut of the first mass idol group, the Onyanko Club, Produced by lyricist and television writer Yasushi Akimoto, the group, consisting of 50 plus members, morphed into a media sensation during the relatively short course of its life. However, the 90s saw idol culture sidelined by the rise of J-pop acts, including singers and groups produced by hitmaker Tetsuya Komuro and top charting bands such as Mr. Children. Mainstream idol music went underground, with performers moving to more private venues to cultivate smaller but dedicated fan bases. The trend began in the late 90s with the debut of Morning Musume, an all-female idol group produced by singer Sunku that went on to release million-selling singles. What made the culture the dominant scene in the 2000s, however, was AKB48 and the return of Akimoto as the mastermind behind the biggest selling all-girl group franchise in Japanese history and an international phenomenon with numerous local affiliations and commercial tie-ups. Only 7 guests attended the group's now legendary 2005 debut performance in its namesake AKB48 Theater in Akihabara. But Akimoto was betting on that intimate setting to pay off. He took cues from how indie idols were connecting to fans in the 90s. What he aimed for was producing incomplete or unfinished amateurish idols that fans can meet and nurture as they improve as entertainers. Himeno says the handshake greeting events the group and its sister groups host is one example of the carefully maintained illusion of closeness Akimoto built, albeit with criticism of ruthless monetization and sexual undertones, where fans who buy CDs and merchandise can queue up to meet their favorite members. These meet and greet events became an unexpected scene of an attack on 2 group members in 2014 by a man wielding a portable saw. In 2009, Akimoto orchestrated the first AKB election, where fans purchasing AKB CDs were given tickets to vote for their favorite girls. The results were then broadcast on television from massive arenas, creating a faux sense of suspense as rankings were announced. This was the same year Himeno, then 16, made her debut as a so-called underground idol. The word has no concrete etymology, but is purportedly derived from how amateur idols often performed in underground live houses for small crowds of fans, known for occasionally launching into impromptu singing and dancing tirades called otaku. The term underground idol had a derogatory term back then, and our audiences were much more otaku-esque compared to recent years when the subculture has been drawing new fans. Think of the Densha Otoko type natural-born otaku who were into anime and anime voice actresses and carried excessive baggage around. Those were our fan base. The scene has since become a hodgepodge of countless idols, both major and minor, but Himeno feels the peak has passed, and the idol boom that began in the 2000s may soon give way to something else. She herself plans to retire from the stage. Himeno has booked an 800-capacity hall on April 30th for her last concert, which inadvertently is the day Emperor Akihito is expected to abdicate, bringing an end to the Heisei era. Well, it's like, and I realize this is kind of weird, but I kind of had stars in my eyes reading that, just based on how genius the marketing of that is, and understood that there's an entire sleazy underbelly to the entire idol industry, but you also have to appreciate just how good a marketing move is to have that sort of involvement of the fans in like cultivating or bringing up and supporting a new artist like that from the ground up.
Yeah.
Global expansion. If the idol boom can be considered a highly marketable subgenre of otaku culture, the central platform that fuels the grassroots creativity of the scene may be the comic market fan convention of Dojin, held twice a year in Tokyo. Inaugurated in 1975, Comiket, as is also known, has grown to become the world's largest fan convention. The most recent 3-day event that lasted from August 10 to 12 drew 530,000 attendees, including cosplayers bearing the summer heat as they made their way between thousands of booths selling fan art ranging from manga, anime, music, and countless other merchandise. It was the early Comiket events that spawned the cosplayer costume play trend in Japan, when Dojinshi Circle members began dressing up as favorite manga and anime characters in order to attract attention to their products. The phenomenon has since gone global, with cosplay-themed events being held regularly in numerous countries. Kazutaka Sato has been helping run the not-for-profit event for 3 decades, and credits the event's continuity for sending out talent into the world and maintaining a place amateurs and professionals can freely showcase their creativity without hierarchical constraints. That feeling, and the global reach of the culture he witnessed as the Japan Expo in Paris, where he saw crowds of French otaku, prompted Sato and 2 other co-founders to launch the International Otaku Expo Foundation in 2015 as a means to bridge the many otaku-themed events held around the world. The organization now includes 118 events from 44 nations, Sato says. These events are like schools that educate future talent, he says. Comiket has been thriving since way before the Heisei era, and that perseverance is key to creating a culture. It takes time. Now, I don't know if a lot of people really appreciate just how pivotal Comiket is in the entire industry. Like, there's a symbiotic relationship, there's a give and take between comic market and the greater otaku goods industry, because a lot of the artists that make their way into the industry start at Comiket and go on to make works that end up getting doujin produced from them at Comiket.
Yeah.
So
it's a circle of life.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feeds into itself.
See, some cynical people be like, it's a snake eating its own tail. I've heard that term before, by the way.
Well, referring to the Comiket cycle, that's endless growth.
No. But the whole like marketing to otaku type of stuff in general.
Well, it's fucking worked for 3 decades.
Because I guess they're not having children, blah blah blah. Whatever.
Well, it's
Listen, this was my Toy Box DX days. I had to hear this shit.
Well, I mean, they thought they were right, but they weren't.
No, because they don't know about this stuff.
So and here's the thing. It's like, so this is the nature of fan service. A lot of people get fan service twisted and thinking it's just like titties, but the nature of fan service and why it's such a pivotal element of anime. Like, if you don't think fan service should exist, you're missing a pivotal point of the medium that kind of keeps it alive. Well, not necessarily keeps the thing alive, but it's a significant part of why anime is the way it is. See, anime invites the viewer to participate, and it does that in a way that produces things like doujinshi. This is like apart from the titties, this is the chief example of the fan service paradigm. There are no less than 3 or 4 entire works of media based just off of that alternate reality sequence from the last episode of Evangelion. So like when Evangelion turns into a school comedy for 5 minutes, people took that and ran with it. And that's where we got Angelic Days. That's where we got the Shinji Ikari Raising Project. That's where we got the Girlfriend of Steel 2 game from. Just from that like sequence of a few minutes from the last point of one episode of this entire anime that tells this entire story, but people took one part of it and decided, I'm going to tell a story from this. That's fan service. Because it's inviting the viewer to participate in the work. It's not just the work stands on its own, take it or leave it. It's okay, now it's your turn. And that's what people are missing when they just reduce fan service to the titties. It's not just that. It's inviting, like, the whole Mobile Suit Variations paradigm is
that's what I was
service.
talking about that other episode about like what how to make a successful new thing, and I was talking about one of the appeals with Gundam is that why Gundam got popular is it added extra. There was more to add than what was in the show.
Yes, exactly. It's fan service. You're inviting the viewer to participate. You're inviting people to speculate, to create other shit based on different parts of what you've already created. And embracing that and making that into new works. It's like every Gundam OVA, 0080, 0083, 8th MS Team, Thunderbolt, that's all fan service. Hey, let's take this one part of the 1 Year War and, like, okay, let's see what's going on in Southeast Asia while the 1 Year War is going on. And boom, 8th MS Team. Let's see what's going on in Side 6 while the end of this conflict's going on. Boom, 0080. Hey, let's take a look at the ruins of the Moor colony sector. Boom, Thunderbolt. All of these independent works, but they're all based off of let's take this one part of this world that was introduced in 0079 and expand on them. And that's what anime does. It invites the audience to do exactly that. So we reached the last header here. Loss of identity. Goto, who is single, lives within walking distance of Akihabara and is occasionally interviewed to explain the allure of otaku culture and its mecca. He watches around 20 episodes of new released anime a week. Too few for an anime otaku, he says. Jesus Christ. And knows where to find shops down narrow alleys that sell rare board games and anime goods. He seems somewhat confounded, however, by the growing popularity of the subculture and how it seems to be infiltrated by quote-unquote regular people.
Was this the database animals guy or
no
different?
No, this is the otaku that they're interviewing for this article, not
right.
Yeah. For otaku like myself, who have been part of the scene for decades, it feels like they are stepping into our sanctuary, he says. It's been our status or identity to be knowledgeable on things that the popular kids in class didn't know or care about, he says half-jokingly. What are we to do if they also become otaku? And the article ends there. So and maybe I'm missing the point. Maybe I'm missing the point / being naive. But when he says, what are they to do if they also become otaku? Isn't become otaku a good thing?
Yeah, that's like, it's
like, and that's number one. And number two is like, we need to realize this. Like, we kind of have some say into whether people coming into the subculture become otaku or not. It's what we talked about a while back when we talked about the older fan base engaging with the newer fan base and kind of coaching them up.
yes. Something they don't really do.
Well, it's like this get off my lawn mentality when it's like, well, maybe the kids want to learn about your lawn. Like maybe you can bring them up to a point where they have some interest in what you're talking about. And it's all a matter of it's always a matter of being able to introduce it in a way that they'll interact with, but that's not hard.
Well, I think the argument is the fact from the old guard is that the new guard isn't willing to learn about old stuff.
That's my thing. I'm not certain they tried, or I'm not certain they tried correctly. Because like I'm by no means an old guard, but I certainly had a deeper interest.
And there's people way older than even me.
Oh
so.
yeah, well, yeah, but I certainly had a deeper interaction with the media than say the people in my anime club. And yeah, maybe it was pulling teeth to get them to watch Evangelion, but
what type of stuff did they want to watch?
Well, we watched a whole lot of different stuff back in my anime club. This is what I really liked about it. Is like we had cultivated a group of people who were remarkably open to new anime. People certainly had their preferences, but generally speaking, people were open to watching new stuff. There were a couple hiccups certainly, but it's like one of the first anime we watched when I joined, which is like the meeting after the first meeting, because for some reason nobody told me that they started an anime club. It's like, oh, hey, Anubis, did you hear about the anime club? No, who forgot to tell me? What is this? But one of the first anime we watched after I joined was Macross Plus, based off of my suggestion. And we watched Macross Plus. I think they watched the first couple episodes of Elfen Lied at some point. I know they watched My Bride is a Mermaid. We watched some Serial Experiments Lane. Running the entire gamut from like 80s to modern anime.
Didn't they want to watch Cowboy Bebop also?
So we had an unspoken list, like an unwritten list of anime that we wouldn't watch in Anime Club because everyone who wanted to see it has already had the chance to see it, and Cowboy Bebop was on that list, but I don't think anyone ever seriously suggested it.
Oh, okay.
And that's another part of it, is part of what we, like, among myself and the other leadership, part of what we planned on, like, what we organized the club around was this club is about discovering new anime.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is why we had that unspoken list of, okay, we're not going to watch Cowboy Bebop up in here. We're not going to watch Fooly Cooly up in here. Because everyone who's wanted to see that has had the chance to see that. We're going to try and introduce some people to new anime in here. And part of the problem, I think, with the old guard is that they don't they don't cultivate that environment. I think a lot of the problem with the old guard not being able to coach people up is that they don't have the right methods. Because what's the stereotypical personification of the old guard is like the person who's highly knowledgeable but very curmudgeonly about how nobody they don't encounter other people who appreciate anime in the same way they do. And I feel like a lot of the people just haven't been given that opportunity. Like, they don't know that there's a way to engage with the media in a way that seeks knowledge or perspective about it. And it's like you're not gonna turn most people into your typical like old guard, highly knowledgeable type, but you can get them closer to that, and you can encourage that they continue to explore the medium in that way. And another thing is like, yeah, there were a lot of people who definitely had not the same relationship with anime that I did, and of varying levels of experience. Like, there are people who were back in my anime club. There were people who they liked anime because they were fans of animation. So they liked anime, but they also liked a whole lot of Western animation, which isn't true for me. But they had different stuff to introduce to the club and this stuff like that I haven't seen. Like Senkoro. That's one I had never seen. Tekken King Creed is one I had never seen before I started interacting with the anime club crowd. As a matter of fact, there was one girl in there who was probably as much, if not more, into Gundam than I was. And like not just Gundam, but like I came in the room one day and they were all watching Crusher Joe, and that was something she had brought in. So it's like a whole lot of people who were into a whole lot of different stuff, and I think that's also another element of it is people need enough diversity in what they're watching to be able to pick something out of it and go from there. And I think that's a lot of the problems people are running into when they're trying to coach people up into anime but don't know how to do it. Because it takes an element of being able to interact with them on their level, which I don't think a lot of people are willing to do because they're very stuck in their ways. So that was Japan Times on the development of otaku culture throughout the Heisei era. So we saw at the very beginning, you saw the massive stigma surrounding the Miyazaki killings that went into the effort to rebuild that identity, and then the turnaround with stuff like Densha Otoko. But then we may have gone too far with that because now a whole bunch of ordinary people, quote unquote, are getting into anime, and people are starting to lose the identity, and people starting to see changes in the culture and how people interact, because you see a whole bunch of people who weren't brought up in the culture in the same way that the old school otaku of the 80s were. And you're starting to see culture shifts around that. But again, I think that's something that's fixable. It's just not a whole lot of people know how to do it. And maybe that's an element of a lot of the old school otaku not having good social skills. But that probably plays into it significantly.
To be fair, there is a marked difference between the way the old guard consumed anime and the way the new guard, because it was expected that with the guard, even to my time, where it wasn't, you could sort of see everything that was available in the West, whereas now it's like there's so much.
Oh yeah, it's the seasonal anime culture.
Yeah, so it's how do you get the seasonal anime culture people to be interested in, here's this like, OVA from like 30 years ago, or here's this like movie from 30 years ago that may have meant a lot.
I think the answer for that is you don't just introduce them to an OVA from 30 years ago. They're not going to know what to do with it. There's a lot of putting things into context that needs to be done before people are willing to accept things that are from an entirely different paradigm. Like, again, back when I was running the anime club, the year it started off, we got a whole bunch of new members, and I went up to the front and I had this speech that I don't even remember, but what I did was I put it into context for them. It's like, okay, what I'm about to show you was made by like 12 dudes in a warehouse, created for this convention. It was done the day of the convention, and they weren't really paid for it. They didn't do it for any reason other than they wanted to get it done. They didn't have the right materials. They didn't have the right. They didn't have a formal studio. They just went and did this, and then I showed them the Daikon 4 animation. And like, you don't.
I knew that's what you were talking about.
Oh yeah, of course.
Said.
I love the Daikon 4 animation. The reason I had to put it into context for them is that they're not going to get the significance of that unless they have some context. And then after the animation was finished, I was like, the people who made this went on to make Nadia the Secret of Blue Water, World Space Force Wings of Oniyamis, Otaku no Video, Neon Genesis Evangelion. They went on to found Studio Gainax, and this is what happens when you have the kind of passion that pushes you to just do some shit because you want to do it. But without putting into context for that, it's like, oh, okay, it's just some wild animation from the 80s set to an ELO song, and like, it's cool, but you don't understand the significance of it. Like, in order to get someone interested in watching something, a 30-year-old OVA, when they're used to seasonal anime culture, like, you need to run through the genealogy. And like, it needs to be something that they already kind of interact with. So it's like, if someone had just gotten done watching,
see, I would explain the fact, like, see, this was done before computers. This was all done by hand.
See, they have to have a deep interest in the specifics of the animation. Yeah, exactly. I know. But like, if someone had just gotten done watching Kabaneri the Iron Fortress, and they really liked the character designs, I might slide in here with, hey, that same character designer that you liked so much in Kabaneri the Iron Fortress did this series back in the 80s called Super Dimension Fortress Macross.
Here's the movie version.
Might check that out.
Yeah.
But again, you have to identify their sphere of interest, because if it's not something they're all up on, it's going to be more difficult. And that's where it comes in. Like, you have to actually interact with the people who you're trying to coach up. You can't just expect them to be into old school anime without context for it, without having a reason why they should watch it.
By the way, this weekend was 60th birthday.
Whose?
Hideki Anno's birthday.
Damn, son. Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
Happy birthday to Anno.
that tracking shot, by the way, was done by him in Daikon 4. The part where it was like the buildings.
Oh yeah.
And the buildings panning.
Yeah, of course it was done by him. It's like if, and this is kind of easy mode, but like if someone loved Evangelion, it's real easy to get them to watch the Daikon 4 animation because you have that genealogy. So okay, this is what all those people did like 10 years before that. And if someone's really into Evangelion, they're probably going to be like, I'm on board. How long is this? 3 minutes? I'm on board. I'll take 3 minutes of my life to watch what ended up creating the thing I love. But again, it's being able to interact with people in order to suss out what they care about in anime. And then from there, then you can get them into the older stuff, and then you can get them to interact with the medium in a little bit closer of a way to how you interact with the medium. But you're not gonna get people into watching 80s OVAs by being curmudgeonly about it, and that's where I think a lot of the old guard get it wrong. So yeah, Otaku of the Heisei era is a very, very interesting article. I don't even remember when I found this, but it's been sitting in my bookmarks for a very long time. And I never got around to reading it until just recently. But it does mirror a lot of what I was talking about in Neon the magazine and the articles you can read on Iyashikei right now. And it does kind of paint a picture of how otaku culture got here and kind of teases at the mystery of where it's going to go. And it's going to be interesting seeing how the culture develops over the course of the next several years. Anything else you got, VZ?
No. I don't think,
yeah. In that case, that's the show. The email address is ntrradio@gmail.com. The website is ntrradio.net. Check out VZ's stuff at vzmk2, more at mechagotai.wordpress.com. His book is The Big Book of Idols. You can find that at thebigbookofIdols.com. He also does the shirts. Iyashikei.moe/store is where you can find the shirts. Iyashikei.moe being where I post articles about otaku lifestyle, otaku culture, all that good stuff. I'm also starting a new venture that is otakuentrepreneur.com. That's talking about business and finance from an otaku perspective, as well as talking about the business behind subculture related topics. So you can find that at otakuentrepreneur.com. Shinikiba Anime Goods, that's shinikiba.moe, is where I sell half-naked anime girl figures. Been selling I've been selling an abnormally high amount of figures during the COVID quarantines, and I'm wondering if that's correlated. Been doing no marketing, by the way. It's just all just organic sales. People have been just buying up anime figures. But yes, that's shinikiba.moe. I am at TAnubis on Twitter. VZ is at VZMK2 on Twitter. The show is at NTR_radio on Twitter. I'm Time of Horse Anubis.
And I'm VZ Mark II.
And even though the emperor abdicates every time we say